Hi, my name's Seve Bambury, and I'm a very proud certified Faraday Advisory Board chair. I have had 33 years of commercial experience in business. I guess I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur. Started my first business as a young fella with a lawn mowing round back in the 70s and started my first real business in 1993. I've been through the highs and lows of business, those hard-fought, I guess, commercial experiences that come from being in the trenches. I've achieved exponential growth. I 10x my first venture over a period of time and exited for multi-million dollars. Went into my second venture and made a mistake and lost a lot. And I got a lot of experience from that and had the challenge of stepping back up again. There's a lovely saying, it says, get knocked down 7 times, stand up 8. I stood back up again, started my next venture, and over the GFC, took an organization and grew that by just under 1,000% over the GFC years. So another 10x. So I guess it feels, Mark, that everything that I've done in my career has brought me to this place now as a Faraday certified. I'm pretty excited about being able to share my skills and help support business owners. And today we're talking about engineering upward economic mobility, helping organizations to grow. But there's a lot more to growth than just the financials.
Hi, welcome to Governance Bites. My name is Mark Banicevich, and as you just heard, I have again the pleasure of spending time with Seve Bambury. Seve, thank you so much for your time. The topic du jour around engineering upward economic mobility. I'm going to ask you to start by framing this topic for us, please. What are we talking about when we're talking about engineering upward economic mobility?
Uh, Engineering upward economic mobility, I guess, is the ultimate sense of growth. Growing an organization, allowing it to grow financially. It's not just top line, it's bottom line as well. So quite often come across organizations that are growing wrong places. They're putting all their efforts and service to an area which is really competitive. It's really hard to resource up, and there's low profit margin in it. So economic mobility is growth, but not just growth for growth's sake. It's growing in the areas that matter.
Right. Yeah. So why do boards tend to underweight these bold, high impact moves in favor of safe decisions?
Because I guess because of their comfort zone. Quite often organizations are happy to stay in, and it's comfortable for them.
Mm.
And particularly when you see organizations that are under pressure, there is so much. We talked about this previously, Mark. So much volatility with what's going on in the world right now. So much uncertainty with what's going on, and that creates a level of complexity for businesses that just put more things on their to-do list. And sometimes the default position when that happens is that you just put your head down and just get back to what you know.
Mm.
Like, I'm just going to pretend that that's not there. But the elephant in the room is it is there. We've got to make a decision around it, but we're procrastinating and not making that decision because we don't know how to answer it. And we're kind of stuck. So we've got to be prepared to go, well, I am stuck. I've got to face it. I need some help. And that's the first, it's one of the, I guess, the growth mindsets that you have to have in order to achieve upward economic mobility is accepting that there are things that you don't know, and you don't need to know everything. You just need to know where to find the right advice.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. In Faraday, you talk about the five big moves. What are the five big moves?
Yeah, look, a great question. The five big moves come down to, I guess, in the first instance, you can break them down. The first three are relative to the portfolio that you're carrying. So the first one of those is programmatic mergers and acquisitions. So that might be acquiring a company, it might be merging with selling down some of what you've got. Once you understand what it is that you're really in service to and where you want to be going, sometimes we find organizations that are doing things that best sit with someone else. Now, that might be a partnership. It might be taking a part of the business that you've got and separating that from the rest and on selling it so that you can go and accelerate the bits that have got your core competencies and capabilities internally. And I know I've made that mistake myself. So I've had that experience of being able to do that. So your mergers and acquisitions is a really important one. The second part of it is resource allocation. Where do you put your resources? And that comes back down, those two are linked together. Once we understand where we want to be going, what capabilities we've got, what are our endowments that we bring, that we have in the business, what are we starting with, and our strengths that we can then apply into these areas. Okay, we allocate our resources into those areas that will give us that upward economic mobility. Because without that, we can be, I guess, fractured in the way that we're trying to move forward, and we're trying to do too many things. So we want to simplify that. The third one, again, related to the first two, is where we're going to invest our capital. So we're going to allocate our resources, our people, and then we're going to reallocate our capital. So those three broadly sit under the portfolio. Those are those three big moves. And the other two are really about performance, productivity increase. How do we increase our productivity? Once we know where we want to be going and where we're going to invest our resources and our capital, we can make an acquisition potentially, and we can then go out there and we can increase our productivity accordingly. So that's the fourth big move. And then the final one is differentiation. How do we differentiate ourselves from our competition? How do we create a compelling reason for people to come to us and purchase from us as opposed to our competitors? So that's the fifth big move, understanding where we compete, how we compete, and what sets us apart.
Where do, in your experience, boards most often fall over when they're trying to support or challenge these big moves?
Where do they fall over? I guess trying to do them without the experience,
Mm,
trying to do it all themselves. They and not really understanding the implications of the move that they might be trying to make, because we don't know what we don't know, right? So
yes.
it's really important that we bring in the right experience at the right time to be able to make those moves. So I think you know trying to do everything ourselves can undo us at the end of the day.
So make sure you've got the right capability in the boardroom.
Yeah, well, I guess understanding also, deeply understanding where we are as an organization and where we want to go on the way. It's an important part of the Faraday framework. It's
Yes.
a process that allows us to understand what are we starting with, what have we got, where are we going, and what do we need to bring into that organization on that journey. Whether it's
Yeah.
a skill or an experience that we need to have and retain within the organization that we can do through training, upskilling, recruitment, or whether we bring in an advisor for a specific period of time to allow us to move through that particular phase of what the business is in service to doing at that particular time.
Great. Many see governance as oversight. What does it mean for governance to become an engine of execution?
And it's sorry, my computer was doing something weird then. Did that
I
come
heard
through on
that.
your side? Yeah.
I'll repeat the question. Many see governance as oversight. What does it mean for governance to become an engine of execution?
Again, it comes back to, and we've talked about this a lot over the last couple of episodes, Mark, is knowing where you are and what you're starting with, your endowments, knowing where you want to be going, and having your three horizons. So your big, hairy, audacious goal,
Yes.
Horizon 3, Horizon 2, taking us in that direction, and Horizon 1. That's what we're doing right now.
Hmm.
What are we doing right now? So once you understand that, then you're able to execute in service to the direction that you're going. You've got a great strategy, and you execute accordingly.
What changes are required to support the shift in terms of changes to the board agenda, changes to the cadence of board meetings, or changes to the flow of information? Do you need to support the shift for these big moves?
I think you've got to have a framework of accountability. You've got
Mhm.
to have the right metrics. So you need to understand where you're going, what does success look like when you get there, and how will we measure success? There's a lot of organizations go, well, we're going to do that. But if we're not measuring it and holding ourselves accountable, how do we know when we get there?
Yes.
So you've got to have that. You've got to understand the capabilities that you have and the capabilities that you don't, and what
Mhm.
capabilities are required in service to achieving those goals, whether it be in Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3.
If boards are unable to are to enable this upward mobility we're talking about, what different information do they need to make those decisions? You've talked a lot in the past about the use of data and the importance of data. So what information do they need to enable these upward mobility moves?
Look, and data is just so important because an organization typically carries a bunch of assumptions and felt beliefs. It might be the way that they've always done things, and
Mm,
being able to use the numbers to uncover and unpack what's actually going on. Because what we think is happening isn't always what's actually going on when we start diving into the numbers. So numbers are really, and then having the right advice at the right time for what the business needs.
mm.
If we know what our capabilities are and where those gaps are, we can bring the right advice in to give us the right advice in our journey, and that can be a revelation in itself. So part of the role there is to challenge assumptions and felt beliefs, and with data, people, skills, expertise, and knowledge that don't currently sit within the business are an important part of that. And there's always going to be knowledge, experience, and expertise within the business, and it's that blend of the two. We don't sort of come in and go, well, that's what you got to do. And there's no, you have conversations around it. So it's good, healthy debate that takes place.
Right. In your experience, what skills or experiences are missing from typical boards when it comes to value creation?
I think coming back to those big moves and coming back to it really does depend because no two assignments are the same. Are
Mm,
not the same because the capabilities of a leader in its business are going to be different. Um, the competitive environment for organizations are going to be different. The skills and expertise that they need is going to be dependent on what they have, where they're going, what they want to achieve, how fast they want to. It will impact the cadence. If you want to go really fast, then you may need to invest more time. You may need to meet more often. So boards where we meet through certain periods of time when we're going through a situation that we need to be able to work through, then it's going to be meeting more often because it's a big situation that we're dealing with. And it could be an external factor that's impacting that, and that's impacting us in a massive way. So we need to meet more often. That cadence is
What's when you're talking about meeting more often, what sort of frequency are you talking about in some of these cases?
sometimes it's as a chair, you're talking to the business owner, the CEO, the founder on a monthly basis anyway. You're doing check-ins to make the board might meet every 2 months, every 3 months, depending on where they are, based on a number of factors, their growth ambition are impacting them, and the complexity of market forces that are taking place at that time. In other
Right.
cases, they may meet more often.
So as a
Sure.
chair, because generally you're talking about to be very stereotypical. You're often talking about quarterly advisory board meetings, aren't you? And then, as you say, the chair talking more frequently with the CEO of the organization. And so, in the cases that you need to make a decision more quickly, you might have the whole board come together on a monthly basis for something instead.
Absolutely.
Right.
Situation or circumstances unfolded, and you need to call a meeting
Hmm.
that
Right.
requires everyone in the room. So there's no, you cut the cloth according to what you need to
Yeah.
for the
No
given,
hard and fast rule,
situation.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Coming back to these big moves comes with big risks. How should boards think about failure in this context if something doesn't go to plan?
Yeah, look, I think failure is a very important part of growth. If you said to me, "Look, I've never failed in my life," then I'd say, "Well, you're not really being honest." Failure is part of it. If you are chasing those big, hairy, audacious goals, you're not going to get things right all of the time.
Hmm.
Um, it's important that you put guardrails around some of the decisions that you're making at times, because fundamentally they are going to be bigger impacts than some of the others. But it's also important to pass on that skill and expertise, whether it be internally, or whether it be through delegation, to be able to allow people to step up and grow themselves, because organizations grow when people grow. And in order for people to grow, we've got to let them fail from time to time. And we've got to, as I say, make sure we've got guardrails around some of those bigger decisions. But in some of the smaller ones, we let them go and do their thing. We're
Yeah.
there for them and support them. We're coaching and we're mentoring. Um,
And the guardrails then are about minimizing the consequence, the poor consequences of failure, right? So, as you say, when you take big risks, things don't always go to plan, but you want to put guardrails in place so that the consequences of things not going to plan aren't dire for the business. And
Yeah.
then, as you've said before, get up and do it again.
Yes, and look, I think you've got to have a culture of being able to take responsibility. You've got to go. I think for me, a couple of the fundamentals that I've always embraced is there's no such thing as a bad idea. You need to encourage creativity. If you're in service to economic mobility and to growth and to big, hairy, audacious goals, you've got to be able to accept that there is no such thing as a bad idea. There are going to be some ideas that don't work as well as others. Doesn't mean to say you have to take all of those ideas. But the other element that sits with that, Mark, is that mistakes are okay. It's
Yes.
okay to make a mistake. And if we make a mistake and it impacts others, take responsibility and bring those people that might have been impacted by it, own it, and then work through how we're going to put it right to the satisfaction of the people that might have been impacted.
Can you think of examples from your career of organizations that have successfully, created this upward mobility? And in those cases, what have boards done differently to be so successful?
I think the willingness to accept that they don't have to get it right and being prepared to bring in around them people that know more than they do themselves. I think one of the key elements of leadership is to, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You just need to know where to find the smartest person. We talked in an earlier in the concept of who, not how. You
Yeah.
don't need to know how to do everything. You just need to know who are your best who's that know the how of that. And that's a great thing with the Faraday framework is that we've got some very, very seasoned chairs that have got experience in different areas. And we've got, I think, over 200 advisors now that we can bring in relative to what the business needs.
So being aware of what their gaps are and getting expertise in when it's needed, and being prepared to fail, and then just being able to get up and get back on with it.
Yeah, having the courage to take responsibility and to move forward and to stand back up again.
Great. Can a company pursue aggressive value creation without eroding trust or their social license?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. That comes back down to the culture of an organization. You build trust by being transparent, by being authentic, and to having a great culture that embraces that. So yes, you can have tremendous growth of building cultures. I've done a lot of work on cultures, and you can use culture as a key differentiator from a sales perspective. It sets us apart. You can use a culture for hiring. You can use a culture for holding people accountable, and having core values accordingly. I mean, I've developed core values, purpose, and mission for a number of organizations. I think if you've got that culture as the foundation in place, and then you've got that growth that comes from that, it's a great asset to have a tremendous culture because you can use it to attract incredible talent, to retain incredible talent, and to grow an organization accordingly.
Yes. Yeah, very much. You've talked over the course of our conversations a number of times about this concept of that we're living in a VUCA world, right? With your volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and that's the pace of decision making, the pace of business, the complexity of business is really increasing. So, what will distinguish boards that can successfully engineer upward mobility over the next decade? What's different about the boards that is going to be required in the next 10 years?
Look, I think agility is really important. I think it comes back down to having the right understanding of where the organization is at and what impact that volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity is having on the business. To
Mm,
be able to work through frameworks as we do to identify what the impacts really are on a business, and then have those courageous conversations. Having a strategy that's got those three horizons and bringing in the right advice at deal with what's going on. So, we've got day-to-day complexities and uncertainty that come across the business. We've got, businesses changing and it's changing fast.
mm,
So being able to be be mindful of those changes, be open to change and having the agility to adapt and adjust moving forward. We've seen so many of the big enterprise Fortune 500 companies that are no longer around anymore. And one of the things that's tipped them over. So, they haven't had that agility. And with the speed of business getting faster and faster, we've got to be prepared to continue to look at things and challenge our traditional thinking, bring the advice in relative to what we need.
So how does that concept of the speed of decision making and the agility affect the three horizons that we're talking about? And you've just talked about examples, and we can think of the BlackBerries and things of this world that used, and Nokia's that used to dominate markets and then fell by the wayside because they weren't agile enough. So how does that how do the three horizons have to be adaptable, and how do you keep your eye on the ball to ensure that the company doesn't collapse?
Great question. And you've got to continue to look at them. You don't set your three horizons and, lock it up and put it away. You've got to look at it. So there may be a situation that takes place. I mean, we've got the uncertainty with fuel prices right at the moment,
Mm.
supply chain, and that will impact different organizations in different ways, and we need to be able to adapt. So if we've got something that's taking place like on us right now, then we need to be able to talk about that. We need to put a framework around, okay, what is the impact of that? And then what is the impact, what are the decisions that we need to make? And how does that impact our three horizons?
Yes.
One of the key things with organizations is not trying to do too much. When you give an organization 20 things to do, invariably they won't get any of them done. But if you simplify it and you come back down to 3 to 5 things that you want to be doing in the next 60 days, then you'll get all of those done. So you've got your horizon for your short-term horizon. Something comes in that we hadn't seen. It comes in, we sit down, we talk about it, we unpack it, we look at what decisions we need to make. Then we can look at horizon 1, horizon 2, and horizon 3. What's on horizon 1 that we can put on hold while we
Yeah.
deal with this because it's more important. So you've got that agility all the time to complete, to constantly look at and have that agility to make changes and adapt as the business moves forward.
Superb. Again, I got one final question for you. What's one lesson that you would like all board chairs to prioritize or learn?
Um, one lesson for board chairs is not being prepared to have courageous conversations with both themselves and the people that are sitting in front of them. As a chair, we don't have to have all the answers. We just need to know where to find those answers. So I think it's important for a chair that might have a whole bunch of experience to challenge their own assumptions and felt beliefs, and to be willing to adapt and change accordingly.
Magic, Steve. Thanks so much. Been really cool conversations with you. Really appreciate it. I look forward to catching up, hopefully at some point in person if you're over this side of the ditch.
Well, I dare say I will see you at the Faraday conference
Look
coming up.
forward to it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me too.
indeed. Cool. Thanks so much.
Thanks
And
for
we'll see
having
you
me.
next episode.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thank you for watching this episode of Governance Bites. We have more episodes on YouTube and your favorite podcast channel, where I interview directors and experts on various topics relating to boards of directors and governance. We'd love to see you back, and please like, subscribe, and share the videos and podcasts.